Israel, one of the most ancient yet technically advanced and smallest nations in the world. Day after day getting more than her share of headlines on the front pages of the newspapers of the world. Yet still waiting, edging ever closer to her predicted destiny at the crossroads of eternity on this day of discovery.
Few nations of the world ignite as much international controversy. Few people groups, whether in or out of their ancestral homeland, have a history as provocative as the Jewish people. Western Wall Plaza, up above the Muslim Dome of the Rock, sitting in the holiest of Jewish sites, all of which amount to the most contested piece of real estate on earth. When you think about it, nobody unites and divides us like the nation of Israel. Israel gave us the protective laws and moral guidance of the Ten Commandments, the comforting words of the 23rd Psalm. And from the Jewish family tree came Jesus, who taught us not only to love one another, but our enemies as well. But Israel also gave us social and political problems that divide us in national elections and family gatherings. Even Jesus, the Jewish son who died acknowledging that he was the long-awaited Jewish Messiah, was known to have told his disciples, "Don't think that I have come to bring peace, but a sword." Yes, Israel does unite and divide us. She tells a timeless story about nations and about ourselves. And that's one reason Israel can't be ignored, because she gives us a history, a story, and a future that was all foretold by Jewish prophets.
Behold, I am going to make Jerusalem a cup that causes reeling to all the peoples around. It will come about in that day that I will make Jerusalem a heavy stone for all the peoples. All who lift it will be severely injured, and all the nations of the earth will be gathered against it. Zechariah chapter 12.
According to the Bible, Israel would not only be a source of conflict, but a means by which God would reveal himself to the world. A promise that was first made to Abraham.
I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Genesis chapter 12.
People from all over the world come to Israel. Whether loved or hated, Israel is a magnet. She attracts immigrants and journalists and heads of state, along with millions of Jewish, Muslim, and Christian people, all pulled to this land by their faith and by the faith of their fathers. I met with Roni, one of our Jewish guides, in a more modern section of Jerusalem on Ben Yehuda Street. We met to talk about who these people are that are so drawn to this land. Roni, Ben Yehuda has a whole different feel than the old city. Why is that?
First of all, because we are not anymore within the city walls. We are in the modern city of Jerusalem, even though this neighborhood is 120 years old.
120?
Yes, this is the third neighborhood of Jerusalem built outside the city walls.
How far are we from the old city?
We're about a 15-20 minutes walk.
So you can walk it then?
To the old city, yes.
All right. How do you explain the attraction? Why do people come here?
Well, I think that the only name Jerusalem says it all. And you do not come to Jerusalem, you do not visit Jerusalem like you would visit London or Paris or Roma.
Why not?
Because Jerusalem, with all what it means, if you're a believer or if you're not a believer, you automatically become a pilgrim as soon as your feet step into these gates. You automatically, something happens to you that I cannot explain.
You've seen that happen over and over
I see
again.
it all the time. You do not leave this city the same way you came in. Something will happen to you on several different levels. but something will happen to you.
So tell me about the Jewish heart and the yearning, the longing, just
The longing for Jerusalem, next in Jerusalem, repeating Jerusalem. And I tell my people, my group, that you can take a Jew out of Jerusalem, but you cannot take Jerusalem out of a Jew. And every single Jew, wherever he lives in the world, whatever time it was, will have Jerusalem in the very center of his heart. The prayers, everything he will do will be Jerusalem. And suddenly you come here, after 2,000 years, you come back to the city where we were kicked out some 2,000 years ago. And you don't have to be a super believer to feel this. Something catches you in the city.
so you're saying even non-religious Jewish people feel that.
You do not leave the city indifferent. You are not the same person before and after.
While in exile in the kingdom of Babylon, an ancient Hebrew wrote a song about the longing of his heart for Jerusalem.
If I forget you, O Jerusalem, may my right hand forget its skill. May my tongue cling to the roof of my mouth if I do not remember you, if I do not consider Jerusalem my highest joy. Psalm 137.
Jerusalem has often been called the Eternal City, a spiritual epicenter, a land of interest to those who are seeking help from beyond themselves. Israel, a land of hills and valleys, known for the famous Lake of Galilee. She has desert regions that stretch along the Jordan River to the lowest point on earth, the Dead Sea. She has date palms, olive trees, sheep, goats, and donkeys that still wander the region. And they're not alone, for the regathered people of this land continue to tell her story. Think of the land of Israel as a great stage, a platform on which the greatest story of history is playing out. Now, the platform itself is about 300 miles long and about 70 miles wide. And on this stage, the nation of Israel, the people of Israel, are actually the cast, the players. The script? Well, we're here at the Israel Museum, and one of the most important parts of that script is housed here. It's a part of the Dead Sea Scrolls. And in 1947, just at the time that the nation of Israel was emerging and becoming a nation after almost 2,000 years of being scattered without their own national sovereignty, the Dead Sea Scrolls were found on the western rim of the Dead Sea. Thousands of fragments of scrolls. But among those scrolls was a scroll of the prophet Isaiah, a wonderful scroll. And here at the Israel Museum, that scroll is housed. It's called the Shrine of the Book. The unusual shape is actually to represent the top of a clay jar in which these scrolls were found. Interestingly, the Isaiah scroll describes the Messiah of Israel coming to center stage in this land, bringing salvation.
The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me to preach good tidings to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and the opening of the prison to those who are bound, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord. Isaiah chapter 61.
The Dead Sea Scrolls are an amazingly preserved treasure, a treasure made up of a script that we call Scripture. These scrolls are accurate copies, practically identical to the Bible's Old Testament. And together, they describe that unfolding drama played out for the good of all nations on the stage we call Israel. Why is the nation of Israel located where it is? Why in the world would a chosen people be placed on a sliver of land at the eastern end of the Mediterranean Sea? These are important questions for a land that the Bible calls the Promised Land, positioned strategically at the crossroads of an ancient world. One of the things we've been talking about is that Israel has a story, but she not only has a story, She has a strategic position from which to communicate it to the region. In fact, before the Hebrews ever came into this land, the superpowers of this part of the world were vying for control of the very land that the God of the Bible promised to his people. Ronnie, you were telling me that before the Hebrews ever came to this land, there were struggles over its control, right?
Absolutely.
Like who? Who was struggling for it?
Whoever the big superpower were in the area.
Like who?
From the Egyptians, some 5,000 years ago, to the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Persian, the Greek, the Romans, whoever, all the way to Napoleon in the 19th century, and Allenby in the 19th century,
Really?
First World War.
And they fought over
They
this
fought
land.
over this land, over this specific area.
And why?
Why? Because the strategic location of this very place where we're standing.
And what
right
made
now.
it so strategic?
If you look at the map, Israel was sitting on what the Roman would call the Via Maris, a super ancient highway.
The way of the sea, right?
Yes, the Via Maris, the way of the sea, or the road of the sea, connecting Asia in the north to Africa in the south, Egypt to Mesopotamia.
Okay.
And these were the main trading route back in these days, when we're talking the time when there were no trains and no planes and no boat. People were crossing the lands to go from one place to another to trade. But this road would also be used to invade and to destroy.
Okay, so for military purposes, for
Military
commercial
strategic,
purposes?
exactly.
Okay.
And Israel of today is sitting in the very middle of this Via Maris. And the place where we are today is in the very middle of Israel. So double reason.
Okay,
to
so
be
from
here.
a biblical, a Bible's point of view, if God takes his people and he places them in this land,
Yeah.
it puts them in a position to have influence
Yes,
and to get the word out
absolutely.
to 3 continents.
Absolutely. We've got Africa, we've got Asia, and later Europe.
Okay.
With
Now,
the
now
good
tell us
comment.
about where we're standing right
So
here.
we're standing right by the gate of the ancient city of Megiddo. These city gates are related to King Solomon. We are going back some 3,000 years ago, and 3 cities. And again, to understand the strategy of this country, 3 cities King Solomon will fortified. One is Megiddo, at the very entrance of the Jerusalem Valley.
Again, because of its strategic value.
Because of the strategic value, there's no holy place here, nothing holy here. One will be in Gezer in the south, the entrance from the south to Jerusalem,
Gezer.
overlooking Tel
Is
Gezer.
that Gezer?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. And this will be the breadbasket of Jerusalem.
Okay.
Megiddo will be the breadbasket of this area also. And further north, Tel Hatzor,
Okay.
a bit further north, which will be the entrance to Israel from the north.
Okay,
So
so-
3 very strategic points.
Within the strategic nature
Yeah,
of the whole
yeah,
land
yes,
bridge
yes,
between
yeah,
these 3
absolutely,
continents.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's helpful. Thanks. So when you think of a chosen people and a promised land, it's important to remember that the land of Israel was positioned at a strategic land bridge between 3 continents, between Africa, Asia, and Europe. In many ways, this was the crossroads of the ancient world. So there was a reason for Israel's strategic position at the crossroads of the ancient world. Because God had revealed to Israel how people of all nations could know him, Israel was to be a light to the nations at the crossroads of eternity.
Pay attention to me, O my people, and give ear to me, O my nation. For a law will go forth from me, and I will set my justice for a light of the peoples. Isaiah chapter 51.
Israel is small, only about the size of New Jersey. The entire country would fit nicely inside Lake Michigan. And she's bordered by Arabic-speaking nations. On the east, Jordan and Syria. On her southwest, Egypt. And Lebanon is her northern border. And then there's Iraq and Iran and the Saudi Arabian Peninsula, some of the other Muslim countries in the surrounding region. All of these countries together, these neighbor nations, help us to understand why, as the curtain of history has risen and fallen on the Jewish people, all of the nations of the world have been compelled to watch Israel in order to protect their own interests. You know, as we drove in today, I was impressed at how busy this area still is. A major east-west highway and a busy intersection right down the road. But, you know, I was thinking, in the ancient world, Israel was at the crossroads of 3 continents. Okay, that was a long time ago. Today we have different means of transportation. We fly places today. We don't have to come through this land bridge to get where we want to go in the world. Communication has changed. The media has changed dramatically. So the question now is, how does this nation of Israel continue to be center page in our newspapers and our daily news so often? In addition to the political, economic, and religious factors that keep Israel in the news, the Bible makes it clear that Israel will continue to play an important part in the story that God is telling about himself, which is one reason none of us can afford to ignore her.
Behold, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will fulfill the good word which I have spoken concerning the house of Israel and the house of Judah. In those days and at that time, I will cause a righteous branch of David to spring forth, and he shall execute justice and righteousness on the earth. In those days Judah will be saved, and Jerusalem will dwell in safety. And this is the name by which she will be called: The Lord is our righteousness. Jeremiah chapter 33.
So what significance can there be to Israel's existence today? Why, after 2,000 years, would the Jewish people again have become a nation? These are the streets of modern Tel Aviv. In so many ways, it looks like any big city, any place in the world. But the story of Tel Aviv, the story of the nation of Israel, is so different from any other nation. In fact, there's a memorial here. I'm told that the Hebrew text comes from Jeremiah 31, verse 4, where God talks about rebuilding his people. It's so significant because ever since the Romans destroyed Jerusalem in 70 AD, the nation of Israel, the people had no homeland of their own. As the prophets had predicted, they were scattered to the 4 corners of the earth. But in 1948, something unprecedented happened. After 2,000 years, almost 2,000 years, a nation was reborn. Many who have read about the restoration of Israel as predicted by the prophet Ezekiel believe that we have seen his words partially fulfilled when Israel became a nation again after 2,000 years.
This is what the sovereign Lord says: I will take the Israelites out of the nations where they have gone. I will gather them from all around and bring them back into their own land. I will make them one nation in the land, on the mountains of Israel. Ezekiel chapter 37.
What I'd like to do is show you here at Independence Hall in Tel Aviv some of the stories, some of the memories of a people who were reborn after so many centuries. So as the British mandate came to an end, and while Israel, Tel Aviv was already under attack, a group of Israeli leaders met underground here to sign their modern Declaration of Independence. I have so many thoughts running through my mind right now. So many mixed feelings after 2 world wars and the suffering of so many people on all sides. After a nation has been displaced for almost 2,000 years. You've got the ancient predictions of the prophets. You've got the hopes and dreams of the Jewish people, which is also has the heartfelt fears and sense of displacement by the Arab peoples who feel like they're losing an ancestral homeland that they've occupied for hundreds of years. I think that's why even people who put no stock in the Bible realize that what you have here in the Middle East is a problem that almost seems unsolvable in human terms. Why would the Jewish people be blessed with a homeland, yet left in unsolvable conflict? What eternal purpose could be part of her story? Well, according to the Bible, no other nation has as much to say to us about the love and patience and the anger of God. According to the Scriptures, to know her story is to know our own. The Bible makes it clear that Israel was chosen to be a light to the nations, an object lesson that shows us what happens when God's ways are honored or ignored. So if we look at Israel's story as an object lesson of God's ways, how then can we use this to know more about our own future? What can we see from where we stand today in history? Well, one way to answer these questions is by looking behind us. As we read the New Testament, we see Jesus, a Jewish rabbi, enter Israel's stage. As we follow him, we see that what he says, what he does, brings into a focus everything that we need to see. I'm standing on Mount Arbel. It gives us a wonderful overlook of the northwest shore of the Lake of Galilee. Behind me, 2,000 years ago, Jesus and his disciples lived. He taught, they learned. He did miracles and the crowds gathered. 2,000 years ago, we also have the dividing line, the center page of human history, before Christ and after. And not only do we have the center page of human history, but we also have, according to the New Testament, the dividing line between those who acknowledged Jesus as Israel's Messiah and those who didn't. In that sense, we can say that the history of Israel and the history of Israel's Messiah actually predicts our future. In fact, Jesus said that what we decide about him will determine our own future.
Jesus said, "I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live, even though he dies. And whoever lives and believes in me will never die." John's Gospel, chapter 11.
So, what to do with Jesus was one of the great questions of first century Jerusalem. In fact, after Jesus raised a man named Lazarus from the dead, the Jewish religious leaders were in an uproar. They had to decide what they were going to do with this man who was calling all men to himself.
Then the chief priests and the Pharisees called a meeting of the Sanhedrin. "Here is this man performing many miraculous signs. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him, and then the Romans will come and take away both our place and our nation." Then one of them, named Caiaphas, who was high priest that year, spoke up. "You know nothing at all. You do not realize that it is better for you that one man die for the people than that the whole nation perish." John's Gospel, chapter 11.
One man to die for all people. Now, something really important just happened in this conversation. According to the text, God intervened in the words of the high priest, an intelligent man who had insight into the needs of his people. And yet, God gave his words meaning that he didn't intend. You could read those words and say, did he really get it? I mean, it sounds from what Caiaphas says that he's saying what the rest of the New Testament says, that one man needs to die for all. But he meant something entirely different. He meant we have to take him out. For the sake of the people, for the sake of the nation, we have to kill Jesus, because the text goes on to say that from that time forward, they made plans to kill him. I've thought a lot about Israel and her story. It's an unfolding drama that's still being told. According to the Bible, she gave us the Messiah, the Son of God and a Savior. But now looking forward, I realize more than ever that for all of the nations of the world, Israel remains at the crossroads of eternity.
Next week, the conclusion to our series, Israel, Crossroads of Eternity, and a look at Israel's unique role among her neighbors and the world. Find out more at dod.org.
Support for Day of Discovery comes from the gifts of friends like you.